What's up, everyone? Jim Davis from the Good Athlete Project. Today I'm going to talk to you about self-talk specific to this quarantine moment. Now, anyone who follows our work knows that self-talk is kind of an omnipresent idea. It is the inner narrative, it's the dialogue going on inside of our heads constantly, whether we're aware of it or not. And for that reason, it needs to be looked at. Now, the outcomes of either positive or negative self-talk, accurate self-talk, however you want to categorize it, self-talk in general, are massive. You can imagine that two people, one person, this is too binary, but let's say someone has negative self-talk, another person has positive self-talk. The way they experience the same bit of their environment is completely different. I'm looking out the window right now, I'm in Chicago, it is raining. Okay, if I've got negative self-talk going on, that's not so great. That makes me, whatever. I'm upset that it's raining. Positive self-talk makes me see that thing a whole lot differently. Okay, I always aim for the skew positive, be as accurate as possible, skew positive. First of all, here's one thing that I noticed about the rain. Just as an example here in this quarantine moment, we're in quarantine. I wasn't gonna go play outside today anyway, really. I still might go for a jog. I'm gonna sweat in those clothes anyway. And also, it's 2020. I'm an employed adult, and if I really need to go outside, I'll wear a coat. Okay, I can figure this thing out. That's what this looks like. And if you take it a step further and really add some perspective to your life, you might recognize that that's essential. That the rain is going to allow the food that we eat to grow, that some part of that is an absolutely necessary occurrence, and in that way, it's sort of beautiful. So again, I'm looking at the same thing in my environment, but the way that I perceive it is going to be largely predetermined by the inner narrative that I've got going on. People sometimes equate it to a computer program. Every function, every process of the computer is going to be influenced in part by the way that it's programmed, by its code. Now, if we can work on that code, wouldn't we be in a better place? I think the answer is yes. Step one is to become aware of it. Okay, to be awareness of self-talk is essential. Like I said, these processes are going on in our brains anyway, regardless. So we may as well enhance them if we can. Someone just, I think, bumped another car outside my window. I'll deal with that in a moment. But these processes are going on all the time. Think about this. When you're dreaming, right, there's a dialogue going on. There's an inner narrative happening, totally subconsciously. Okay, wouldn't we want to sort of tinker with that and enhance it if we could? And I think the answer is yes. Step one, like I said, is just tuning into it. Now, we're not going to go too deep into the methods, but I do want to equip you with some strategies. So awareness, look, any sort of mindful practice, just breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, and slowing down the moment might give you a better chance of tuning into your own self-talk. Now, if you want to get super deliberate and super actionable, I think journaling is an amazing exercise, okay, for a lot of reasons, but especially in this self-talk discussion. And when I say journaling, I'm not talking about dictating notes into your phone necessarily. I'm not talking about typing into your iPad or whatever. I'm talking about literally grabbing a pen and a piece of paper and writing down your thoughts and ideas, working through a string of logic slowly and deliberately. That is going to really allow you to tune into your own self-talk. So that's key. Understanding the importance of self-talk. That's key. Okay, not dismissing it as some soft category of operations, as an essential component of the way that you operate and behave and feel. Okay, recognizing that is key. Also understanding that self-talk is comprised of units. And we will go into this specifically later on in a post that we will be making about the difference between motivational self-talk and instructional self-talk. There is a lab out in Greece run by a professor named Theodorakis, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, that distinguishes and studies motivational self-talk and instructional self-talk. I'll give you the quick version here. Motivational self-talk, let's apply it to a game. Let's apply it to a football game. Motivational self-talk is, we got this, we can do this, we're going to win, you're the man, whatever, something to hype you up, right, and motivate you. Instructional self-talk is, okay, it's third down. I'm a defensive end. I see the offensive lineman light on his feet, I think he's going to set up in a pass set, okay? And I am going to attack the outside edge in a certain way. Anyway, you start to get granular, right? So you go from motivational, rev the engine, to granular, which is what steps to take, where to maneuver this vehicle. A lot of metaphors in that comment. But the idea, I think, for quarantine is like, look, we're going to get through this. That could be a big one. I'm going to get through this. We're going to get through this. Man, at the back end of this, I'm going to be so much more prepared, so better prepared to deal with uncertainty in the future. Big moment, big idea self-talk. Instructional, okay, again, that's category motivational. Instructional self-talk is, now how am I going to do that? How am I going to get through this? How do I want to structure my day? What do I want the first step of my memoir writing, if that's a project that you have over this quarantine, what's the first step of that? And I'm recognizing this is happening in real time here, what I'm sharing with you, but I almost called it a break instead of a quarantine. Could you imagine if we approached this whole thing in our minds, we're like, this is just an extended break instead of an extended quarantine? How much that distinction alone would influence the way that we went through our day to day? Anyway, that literally just happened live time. But understanding the units of self-talk and the degrees of these things. Now, humility is the next one. Humility is essential. Because whatever you are going to accomplish in life, okay, pick where this applies in this quarantine moment, you must be humble. Because there are going to be days that don't go the way that you planned. You've got to be willing to forgive yourself and the people around you. You have to be humble, okay? And that is not a soft idea, okay? You'll notice very quickly the next step is accountability. So that's not a soft idea, that's an essential idea, okay? If you don't have humility, if you think you're just going to crush it every day, you're just going to be wrong. And I welcome anyone out there who's tough enough to crush it every single day. Being the best you can be is better than being the best, right? There's only one best, but the best you can be is fluid, okay? It's context specific. It means good days and bad days, you operate within a threshold. If you can stay at the high end of that threshold, you're in a good place. Positive or thoughtful self-talk is a good way of getting there. But again, notice that this goes right into accountability. There's actually a bidirectional relationship there, I think. It is easier to be accountable to your goals, to the processes and the standards that you hold for yourself, if you're humble enough to recognize that it's not always going to go perfectly. I'm not saying set low standards, okay? Set high standards for yourself. Hold yourself accountable. Do the things that you say you're going to do. And if you're not batting 1,000, whatever, okay? If you don't bat 1,000, the reason that these relate is if you don't have the humility to forgive yourself, self-talk changes, okay? You have a goal. You don't accomplish it. You have a tough day, a bad day. Negative self-talk creeps in. You don't have the humility to forgive yourself. All of a sudden it spirals out and your ultimate level of accountability changes massively, okay? You're just not... You can't accomplish at the highest level without a bidirectional, a mutually enhancing relationship between humility and accountability. That's a fact. Now, fitness is the last one. I'm not talking about physical fitness, although I definitely do think that's an important component of this moment. Sedentary behavior is never a good idea. But I'm talking about the fitness to think thoroughly, okay? The fitness to go through processes like these routinely. And I think fitness is the right word, and here's why. It's not easy to pay attention to, understand, have humility, be accountable. It's not easy to do these things when it comes to your own self-talk. Because look, if self-talk is you walking a path through the forest of your brain, you've probably been walking that path your whole life if you haven't tuned into it yet. So it's going to be hard to redirect. It is going to be hard to redirect. But you've got to be willing to engage and you've got to develop a fitness for it because it's a daily activity. And I hope that doesn't scare anyone off because here's the other truth about fitness. Think about it, let's compare it to physical fitness. You run a mile. What's the hardest mile you ever run? The first mile. Getting your butt off the couch, getting into the world, taking the steps toward different and better version of yourself. Like, even though it's hard, that's the hardest part, okay? To recognize that this might be painful, this might be difficult, but I know that it's worthwhile, so I'm gonna get up and do it. I'm going to move through the discomfort. That's the hardest part. But the secret to this whole thing, and the thing that like I think really successful people, athletes, academics, and otherwise don't often share, or don't share enough, I think, is that it gets easier. Okay? When it gets easier, really successful, then you raise the bar, or you raise the bar again, but it does get easier over time. You develop a fitness, just like running a mile, right? You develop a fitness for this sort of work. Think about that. If you can go through a process like this, ultimately move your self-talk in a positive direction, okay, then you are in a state to go through the process again, but it's easier, right? Every subsequent time is a little bit easier. Now, again, back to humility, because some people say that the first mile you run is the most important mile, and I agree, until you've run the first mile. Then the second mile becomes the most important mile, and it's not just an operation of do the next right thing, which I think is really good advice, but it's more of like the next mile, whatever it is, a day or two later, you're gonna have to do that hard thing again, except now you know how hard it is. You might still be sore from the first mile you ran, okay? To say, okay, to remind yourself that, okay, this is worth it. I'm gonna show up again and continue to work on this fitness. I promise you, will get you to a better place. We are not going to improve through avoidance, and everyone knows that. Okay, so this sort of process to tune into one's own self-talk, it might be difficult. In fact, if you need, the more you need it, the more difficult it's going to be, and I assure you of that. But don't shy away from it. There's no chance that you're going to get better if you avoid that sort of discomfort. Become aware of your self-talk. Understand how important it is and the units of it. Have humility, be accountable, and develop a fitness for tuning in and moving through this sort of process. Because it is a process, it's not an outcome. But if you adhere to the process, your outcomes will improve. If you've got any questions, this is a discussion that we love to have within the project, so please do reach out and we'll address them as they come along.